And, but I always remember talking to Hay, walking around his magic population, these interbred lines. And I said, well, how do you choose the plants that you breed onto the next generation? Well, they just pick the bigger ones, the ones that have got a decent yield. And they forget about all of these other interesting plants that just get waylaid, to say the smalls. And actually, it's those plants that actually tell you something about the traits and something about trade-offs. And so I think it's a good lesson for Erie to think about how they select their populations.
I agree with you both in the information, the useful information content of looking at both kinds of plants. But also, I'm going to argue, following Colin Donald, that the plants that grow the best as single isolated plants are not likely to be the plants that give the highest yield when you grow a whole field of them.
I think it raises an interesting question. I always wondered about this to myself, not being afraid of course, it makes it easy to question what they do. But picking an individual plant as opposed to a strategy that you actually select, let's say, a small community of plants. Which one would be the better strategy to make genetic gain? I don't know. But it's
well, the paper that I think was Yuan and all, I just showed one figure from it. But they essentially addressed that question experimentally, and we'll be talking about that in detail, I think, in our next lecture.
okay.
Just sort of to build on what Paul said. I think one of the problems we have is that we may be able to find plants that give good yield and all the other things we want, and not have trade-offs. So there may be something out there that we can find. But the current way that we do breeding is that we put our plants in high nitrogen and we bombard them with pesticides and fungicides and things like that. And so we'll never find those nice plants. And I think one of the things that comes from your talk here is that we should really use breeding methods that are allowing us to select plants that not only have high yield but have other things as well.
Yeah, and so, my section on imaginary trade-offs, it's certainly plausible that a trait that gives higher yield under high fertility conditions might give lower yield under low fertility conditions. But at least the data set that I showed for wheat contradicts that. And the paper I cited, which I think didn't have detailed data, also contradicts that. Now, but that's not to say that there couldn't be sets of conditions where that would be true. Certainly, if you think about weeds, and the cultivars that give the highest yield in a weed-free condition are relatively short, they're going to do really badly in the presence of weeds. And I've seen this in the latest high-yield wheat from the University of California is really short. And as soon as you put it in weeds, suddenly it's not a high yielder at all anymore. So certainly there will be some kinds of trade-offs between high input environments and low input environments. And what I'm saying is, let's try to actually think about what those trade-offs are, and not just assume that any trait that's beneficial in high resource environments, will not be beneficial in low resource environment. I mean, some things will be beneficial in both places.
Good. So maybe John, and then we have to stop there.
Hi, Paul. I was just thinking about plant breeders and their selection approaches. If you wanted something like erect leaves, it's easy enough to select for. It may not be something that works terribly well in nature, because perhaps we're unable to shade the competitors. But in agriculture, of course, we control the density of our plants, and we get to the dome of that state, I guess.
Yes.
So I think it's important that breeders do target, or on occasions at least, don't just select for yield, but target characteristics that might be beneficial for yield. And those aren't necessarily the things that evolution would have selected, but the genes are sitting there, and we have to pull them out in some way.
You know, I'm inclined to agree, but I think this paper by Milanov is really interesting. And you know, to some extent addresses that issue, and I'll be talking about that. Not giving a final conclusion, I guess, but I think that's really quite an interesting issue. You know, to what extent should we be, you know, selecting groups of plants, perhaps not understanding, you know, what the traits are that lead a group to do well, and to what extent can we figure out what the traits are that are going to make a group of plants do well together. And erect leaves, I think, is one that's relatively well understood, but there may be a lot of others that, you know, we don't know about.
Good. We'll continue at 1:15 after lunch with the next topic.